The message reached Earth exactly 18 hours after Hyunwoo left the council chambers. It was simple, direct, and sent to every human colony, station, and ship in the galaxy. Prepare for complete withdrawal, 90 days. Honor all contracts. Leave everything better than we found it. Jin Ho was drinking his morning coffee in the Kepler Mining Consortium office when the message arrived. As director of the largest human mining operation outside Earth space, he controlled 17 asteroid facilities and employed over 3,000 workers from 8 different species. The coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips as he read the words on his screen. His assistant, a young Clicktar named Tiksh, noticed his expression. "Is there a problem, Director Jinho?" "No problem," Jinho said quietly. "Just a change of plans." He set down his coffee and opened the company-wide communication system. "All human personnel, report to Conference Room 7 immediately. All non-human staff, please continue normal operations." Within an hour, every human in the Kepler system knew they were going home. There was no panic, no shouting, no arguments. They had all expected this day might come. Humans were different, and the galaxy had been making that clear for years. So Young received the message while she was performing surgery on a Vellani patient whose crystal structure was cracking from a rare disease. She was the head of the Interstellar Medical Corps, the organization that provided emergency medical care to species whose own doctors could not handle certain problems. She finished the surgery first. The Vellani patient would live because So Young understood how crystal biology worked under extreme stress conditions, something the peaceful Vellani doctors had never needed to learn. Only after her patient was stable did she call her team together. "We're going home," she told the assembly of human doctors, nurses, and medical researchers. "We have 90 days to train replacements and transfer all our research to local medical authorities." Dr. Dongwook raised his hand. "What about the patients who need treatments that only we know how to perform?" So Young looked out the window at the beautiful crystal spires of the Vellani medical city. "We will teach them everything we can in the time we have. After that, they will have to manage on their own." Across the galaxy, the same scene played out in dozens of locations. Tae Min, commander of the Human Defense Fleet, ordered all ships back to human space. His crews had been patrolling dangerous sectors that other species avoided, keeping trade routes safe from pirates and space creatures that lived in the dark between stars. "Sir?" asked Captain Yenna from the bridge of the destroyer Incheon. "What about the patrol routes? Who will cover them after we leave?" Tae Min studied the star, charts showing the vast areas of space that human ships protected. "That is not our problem to solve anymore, Captain. Set course for Earth." The withdrawal was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Most species, when faced with expulsion or major changes, would fight or negotiate or complain loudly. They would make dramatic speeches and demand exceptions and try to find ways to stay. Humans did none of these things. They simply began packing. Minho was an engineer at the massive Titan Forge shipyards in the Centauri system, where the galaxy's largest spacecraft were built and repaired. The facility was jointly owned by 5 different species, but the humans had designed most of its critical systems. Minho had spent 12 years perfecting the stress balance systems that kept the enormous construction framework stable. When the withdrawal message arrived, Minho gathered his team of Vellani crystal workers. These beings were naturally good at precision work, but they had never learned to handle unexpected problems. Their peaceful nature made them excellent at following plans, but terrible at dealing with chaos. "I have 90 days to teach you everything I know about crisis engineering," Minho told them. "We will work double shifts. I will show you every possible failure mode and how to fix problems that should not happen, but sometimes do anyway." The lead Vellani worker, Shalvin, chimed nervously. "But why are you leaving? Your work here is excellent. You have created systems of great beauty and function." Minho smiled sadly as he pulled up the first set of emergency protocols on his computer. "The Council has decided that humans create too much chaos. They want us to change or leave. We have chosen to leave." "But without you," Shalvin said. "Who will handle the problems that require flexible thinking? Who will fix systems when they break in ways we do not expect?" "You will have to learn," Minho replied. We will teach you as much as we can. On the ocean world of Aquatica Prime, human deep-sea engineers worked alongside the aquatic Mordeal to maintain mining platforms that operated in the crushing depths of the planetary oceans. The pressure at those depths would kill most species instantly, and the equipment had to be designed to handle forces that could crush mountains. Da-Yun was the chief engineer for Platform 17, the deepest mining operation in Mordeal space. She had spent 8 years developing the pressure adaptation systems that allowed the platforms to flex and bend instead of breaking when ocean currents changed or unexpected storms created massive pressure waves. Her Mordeal counterpart, Fluxara, swam nervously around the control room when Da-Yun announced her departure. The aquatic being's natural grace in the water could not hide his obvious distress. "The platforms will not survive without your maintenance protocols," Fluxara said, his water suit translating the complex bubble patterns of his native language. "We do not understand how to manage systems that must adapt to changing conditions." Da-Yun looked at the monitoring screen showing 17 different platforms spread across the ocean floor. Each one harvested rare minerals that the Mordeal economy depended on. Each one used human-designed systems that treated unpredictable problems as normal operating conditions. "I will train your engineers as best I can," she said. "But understand that these platforms were designed using human chaos theory. We build things expecting them to face problems we cannot predict. Your people prefer predictable systems that work the same way every time." "Then perhaps we should redesign the platforms to be more stable and predictable," Fluxara suggested. Da-Yun shook her head. "The ocean depths are not stable and predictable. That is why no other species has been able to harvest minerals at these depths. You can redesign the systems to be more predictable, but they will not survive the first major storm." Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. Human teachers at the Galactic University were trying to explain adaptive learning techniques to professors who had never dealt with students asking unexpected questions. Human traders were transferring their flexible market protocols to alien economists who had never planned for rapid economic changes. On the forest world of Verilon, human xenobiologist Yunji was working frantically to transfer her ecosystem management protocols to the local sector research team. She had spent 6 years developing systems to keep the complex forest environment stable, while allowing for natural changes and unexpected events. The lead sector researcher, Morketh, watched nervously as Yunji showed him charts of population, dynamics, and resource flows. His scales shifted from green to yellow, a sign of anxiety in his species. "These calculations are very complex," Morketh said. "They include many variables that may or may not happen. Our research methods prefer to study systems that change in predictable ways." Yunji looked out at the vast forest that stretched to the horizon. Millions of different species lived in a delicate balance that required constant small adjustments to prevent major collapses. "Forest ecosystems are not predictable, Morketh. They are always changing. Species migrate, weather patterns shift, new diseases appear, resources become scarce or abundant. The management protocols have to be ready for anything." "But what if we simplified the system?" Morketh asked. "Reduced the number of species, controlled the weather, prevented unexpected changes?" "Then you would not have a forest ecosystem anymore," Yunji replied. "You would have a garden. Gardens are predictable and stable, but they are also fragile. If something unexpected happens to a garden, the whole thing can die. Forests survive because they are designed to handle chaos." As the days passed, a pattern emerged across the galaxy. Human workers were trying to teach alien colleagues skills that required a completely different way of thinking. The aliens were intelligent and hardworking, but they had spent thousands of years avoiding the kind of problems that humans solved every day. The humans had become the galaxy's specialists in handling chaos, crisis, and unexpected events. While other species had perfected the art of avoiding problems, humans had perfected the art of solving them. And now the humans were leaving, taking their chaos management skills with them. The withdrawal continued with quiet efficiency. Humans honored every contract, completed every project, and left detailed documentation for everything they had built. They were polite, professional, and thorough, but they were also completely, utterly determined to go home. The great hall of Nexus Station stretched out like a massive cathedral made of crystal and metal. 12 tall seats formed a circle around the center floor, each one built for a different alien race. The air hummed with translation devices working, hard to turn dozens of languages into something everyone could understand. Hyunwoo walked slowly to the center of the circle. His black diplomatic suit looked simple compared to the colorful robes and armor worn by the alien representatives around him. He carried only a small data pad and wore no weapons. This was supposed to be a peaceful meeting. The human ambassador looked up at the 12 faces staring down at him. Some had scales, others had crystal skin that caught the light. A few looked like giant insects with too many eyes. One was covered in what looked like living water that moved and shifted constantly. These were the leaders of the Galactic Council, the rulers of thousands of worlds spread across the galaxy. Ambassador Hyunwoo of Earth, said a deep voice from above. The speaker was Chancellor Sektar, a reptilian being whose green scales seemed to shine under the hall's lights. His yellow eyes were cold and unfriendly. You stand before this council to answer serious charges against your species. Hyunwoo nodded politely. He had expected this day to come for months. The signs had been there. Fewer trade agreements, complaints about human behavior, whispered conversations that stopped when humans entered the room. I am ready to listen, Chancellor. High Arbiter Vellani spoke next. Her crystal body rang like a bell when she moved, creating musical notes that the translators turned into words. The charges are simple, human. Your species brings chaos wherever you go. You refuse to accept the peace that all civilized beings enjoy. Please explain, Hyunwoo said. His voice was calm and patient. Sektar pressed a button and holographic images filled the air above the chamber. The first image showed human children playing soccer, running and kicking a ball while laughing and shouting. Your young ones engage in violent competition from an early age. They fight over objects, celebrate winners, and create losers. This teaches aggression. The next image showed a human construction site where workers were building a bridge across a dangerous canyon. Your people seek out dangerous tasks. No other species would choose to work in such conditions. You could build the bridge in a safer location, but instead, you pick the hardest way possible. More images appeared. Human explorers walking into dark caves, human doctors working in war zones, human engineers fixing machines during lightning storms, human athletes climbing impossible mountains just to say they had done it. Every other species in this galaxy has learned the same lesson, said Vellani. Her crystal form sparkled as she spoke. Peace comes from avoiding conflict. Happiness comes from accepting what is safe and known. But humans seem to think the opposite. More deal. Representative Kishara added his voice to the discussion. The water that covered his body rippled as he spoke. In our oceans, we have learned to swim with the currents, not against them. We take the easy paths. This brings harmony to our people, but humans always swim against the current. They create problems where none need to exist. Hyunwoo listened, as representative after representative added their complaints. The insect-like Clicktar spoke about how humans refuse to follow simple hive rules. The plant-based Thornby complained that humans would not stay in assigned areas like other species did. The energy beings called Fluxnar said that human thoughts created disturbing patterns that upset their peaceful mental networks. Your sports teach violence, said Sektar, showing videos of human boxing matches and football games. Your business practices create unnecessary competition. Your exploration missions put people in danger for no good reason. Your military trains for wars that do not exist yet. Most disturbing of all, added Vellani, is that your people seem to enjoy these things. When faced with an easy path and a hard path, humans choose the hard one. When offered peace and comfort, you create your own struggles. This is not normal behavior. The alien representatives began to list specific examples. They talked about human children who played rough games when they could play gentle ones. They mentioned human scientists who studied dangerous black holes instead of safe stars. They complained about human artists who created sad music and tragic stories when they could make happy ones instead. On Kepler Colony, said Kishara, your miners go deeper underground than necessary. They could extract enough minerals from surface operations, but they choose to dig in dangerous areas where cave-ins happen. Why do they do this? In the Vega system, added the Clicktar representative with clicking sounds, human doctors volunteer for the hardest cases. They could treat simple illnesses and live comfortable lives, but instead they work with patients no one else will help. This creates stress and unhappiness. Representative after representative spoke. Each one had similar stories about humans who chose difficult paths when easy ones existed. They talked about human teachers who gave students challenging problems instead of simple ones. They mentioned human parents who let their children fail sometimes instead of protecting them from all disappointment. The pattern is clear, said Sektar, his scales darkening as he became more serious. Humans are addicted to struggle. While every other species has evolved beyond the need for conflict, humans seem to require it. This makes them dangerous to the peace we have all worked so hard to build. Vellani's crystal body chimed softly as she prepared to deliver the council's decision. We have discussed this matter for many months. We have consulted with experts from all member species. The conclusion is unanimous. The hall fell silent. Even the humming of the translation devices seemed to quiet down. Humanity must change, Vellani continued. You must abandon your chaos philosophy. No more competitive sports that create winners and losers. No more dangerous exploration missions. No more seeking out challenges and conflicts. You must learn to live in peace like the rest of us. Sektar leaned forward in his tall chair. You have 90 days to reform your entire culture. Remove competition from your schools. End your military training programs. Stop teaching your children that struggle is good. Learn to be satisfied with safety and comfort. If you cannot make these changes, added Vellani, then humanity will be expelled from the Galactic Council. Your species will lose all trading rights, all access to council technology, and all protection under our laws. You will be alone in the galaxy. The other representatives nodded their agreement. Some looked sad about the decision, but none spoke against it. They had all agreed that humans were too different, too chaotic, too dangerous to the peaceful order they had built. Hyunwoo stood quietly in the center of the circle, looking up at the 12 alien faces. They expected him to argue, to plead, to promise changes that would let humanity stay in their club. Other species had done exactly that when faced with similar ultimatums. Instead, the human ambassador smiled slightly and nodded once. Thank you for making your position clear, he said. I understand completely. We will need those 90 days to prepare. He turned and walked toward the exit without another word. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence of the great hall. The alien representatives looked at each other in confusion. Where were the protests? Where were the promises to change? Where were the desperate negotiations that usually followed such ultimatums? Hyunwoo paused at the doorway and looked back. One question, if I may. When you say we must learn to live in peace like the rest of you, who will handle the problems that require someone willing to take risks? Before anyone could answer, he left the hall, already planning humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. 6 months after Chancellor Sektar returned from Earth with empty hands and a heavy heart, the Galactic Council faced the unthinkable, complete collapse. The crystal cities of the Vellani homeworld had become uninhabitable as stress fractures spread through their perfect geometric structures. High Arbiter Vellani herself had been forced to evacuate to a temporary shelter, made of basic metal and plastic, materials that her people had not used for construction in over 1,000 years. The Mordeal had abandoned their deepest ocean, cities after losing platform after platform to pressure changes they could not predict or manage. Their civilization, which had thrived in the crushing depths for millennia, was being forced back to shallow waters where their technology worked reliably, but their resources were limited. The Clicktar factory worlds were producing goods at barely 30% of their previous capacity, and most of those goods failed quality control tests. Their perfect hive-mind coordination was useless when dealing with problems that had no standard solutions. Even the energy beings called Fluxnar were struggling as their mental networks became unstable due to quantum fluctuations they could not smooth out or compensate for. In desperation, Vellani had taken the unprecedented step of calling for a full council delegation to Earth, not to demand compliance or negotiate terms, but to beg for help from the species they had rejected. The journey to human space took 2 weeks because 3 of the Council's diplomatic ships had suffered system failures that would have been easily preventable with human-designed backup systems. When they finally arrived in the Sol system, what they found left them speechless. Humanity had not just survived their exile, they had built something magnificent. The orbital structures around Earth had expanded into a vast network of interconnected stations, shipyards, and research facilities that moved and adapted like a living organism. Ships came and went in patterns that seemed chaotic, but somehow never resulted in collisions or delays. More importantly, the human fleet now included vessels from dozens of alien species that the Council had either never encountered or had deliberately avoided. Aggressive warrior races worked alongside peaceful explorers, chaotic energy beings partnered with methodical builders, and incomprehensible quantum entities somehow cooperated with straightforward material-based civilizations. Dong Hyun, Earth's new leader, met them at Luna Station with a delegation that included representatives from humanity's new alliance partners. Unlike the desperate urgency that characterized most interactions these days, the humans and their allies seemed relaxed, confident, and genuinely pleased to see their visitors. "Welcome to the Adaptive Alliance," Dong Hyun said with a warm smile. "I hope your journey was safe and comfortable." Vellani's crystal form was cracked and dim, showing stress patterns that made her voice sound strained. "Prime Minister Dong Hyun, we come before you in desperate need of assistance. Our civilization is failing." "We have heard reports," Dong Hyun replied gently. "We are sorry to learn of your difficulties." Sektar stepped forward, his scales now permanently gray with exhaustion and stress. "We offer humanity full restoration to the Council, with leadership positions on all major committees. We are prepared to grant exclusive territorial rights to 12 star systems of your choosing. We will provide preferential trade status and technology sharing agreements. We will also formally apologize," added Vellani, her voice chiming with desperate harmonics, "for our failure to understand the value of human culture. We were wrong to demand that you change. We recognize now that your approach to challenges and chaos was not a flaw, but a vital strength." Dong Hyun listened politely as each council representative added their own offers and apologies. The Mordeal promised exclusive deep ocean mining rights. The Clicktar offered to make human-designed protocols mandatory in all their factories. The Fluxnar pledged to create permanent positions for human chaos theorists in their mental networks. When they finished, Dong Hyun nodded thoughtfully. "Your offers are very generous and your apologies are accepted. We understand that you acted according to your nature and your understanding at the time." Hope flickered in Sektar's yellow eyes. "Then you will return?" "I am afraid that is not possible," Dong Hyun said softly. The silence that followed was profound and terrible. "But surely," Vellani managed, her crystal form flickering with disbelief, "you must see that we need you. Without human expertise, our civilizations are failing. Our people are dying." Narin, the human ambassador who had replaced Hyunwoo, stepped forward. Her expression was kind but firm. "We understand your situation and we sympathize with your difficulties, but we cannot return to council space." "Why not?" Sektar demanded, his scales darkening with frustration. "We offer you everything you could want. Leadership, territory, recognition, apologies for our mistakes. What more can we give you?" Dong Hyun gestured toward the viewing windows where the bustling activity of human space was visible. Ships from dozens of different species moved in complex patterns, working together on projects that seemed to combine multiple different technologies and approaches. "You ask what more you can give us," he said, "but you are thinking about this backwards. The question is not what you can give us. The question is what we have found that we never had before." "What is that?" asked Vellani. "True partnership," replied Narin. In council space, you tolerated human chaos because you needed our problem-solving skills. You put up with our competitive nature because you required our adaptability. You accepted our love of challenges because you needed someone to handle the dangerous tasks you preferred to avoid. She paused, looking at each council representative in turn. But you never valued these qualities. You never saw them as good things in themselves. You saw them as necessary evils that you had to endure to get the benefits you wanted. Dong-hyun nodded. Here, among our new allies, we have found something different. Species that appreciate human nature not despite our chaos, but because of it. Partners who see our love of struggle as a strength to be celebrated, not a flaw to be corrected. Korthuk of the Rathmek stepped forward, his warriors bearing radiating controlled power. Humans taught us that there is honor in facing impossible odds together. They showed us that competition can create bonds stronger than blood. Scholar Vashti of the Queenorm flowed beside him, her crystalline structure shifting in patterns that hurt to look at directly. We learned that chaos and order are not opposites but partners in the dance of creation. Humans understand this instinctively. Young He, a human scientist, added her voice to the discussion. Working with the Queenorm, we solved the unified field equations that had puzzled mathematicians for 2,000 years. Their non-linear thinking combined with our chaos theory opened possibilities that neither species could have reached alone. With the Rathmek, said Junho, we have explored regions of space that were considered too dangerous by every other civilization. We found 3 new forms of life and mineral deposits that will revolutionize energy production. Sektar listened to these accounts with growing desperation. But you could have done these things in council space. We would have supported such research if you had asked. No, Dong-hyun said firmly. You would have supported research that produced results you wanted, using methods you approved of, in partnerships you found acceptable. You would never have supported us working with the Rathmek because you considered them too violent. You would never have approved Queenorm research because you found their thinking patterns disturbing. He gestured toward a massive construction project visible through the station windows. That is a joint research facility built by 17 different species, including 3 that the Council quarantined as incompatible with civilized society. They are incompatible with your definition of civilization, but they are perfectly compatible with ours. Velani's crystal form was flickering desperately now. But without you, our people will suffer. Our cities are collapsing. Our economies are failing. Our citizens are dying in accidents that your systems would have prevented. And that is tragic, Narin said with genuine compassion. We do not wish suffering on anyone, but we cannot save your civilization by abandoning ours. What do you mean? Asked the Mordeal representative, his water suit rippling with confusion. Dong-hyun walked to the window and looked out at the complex dance of ships and stations that made up human space. You built a galaxy based on avoiding problems. You perfected systems that eliminated uncertainty, competition, and chaos. You created a beautiful, peaceful civilization that worked perfectly as long as nothing unexpected happened. He turned, back to face the council delegation. But the universe is not peaceful. Stars explode, planets shift. Quantum mechanics creates random events that no amount of planning can predict. You built perfect systems for an imperfect reality, and when that reality intruded on your perfection, you had no way to handle it. We had you, Sektar said quietly. Yes, Dong-hyun agreed. You had us. We became your immune system, handling all the chaos and unpredictability that you preferred to ignore. We solved the problems you could not solve, faced the challenges you would not face, and adapted to changes you could not handle. And we are grateful for that, Velani said desperately. 6 months after the last human ship disappeared into hyperspace, Chancellor Sektar stood in his private office looking at reports that made his scales itch with worry. The holographic displays around him showed economic data, system failure, reports and emergency requests from a dozen different worlds. Everything was falling apart. The first signs had been small. A trade dispute between the Kliktar and the Velani that normally would have been resolved in days had dragged on for weeks. Without human trade negotiators to create flexible agreements that could adapt to changing circumstances, the two species found themselves locked in rigid positions that neither could abandon without losing face. HFY had been the galaxy's most skilled trade mediator. She had understood something that other species missed, that successful trade required systems that could bend without breaking. When market conditions changed unexpectedly, her flexible protocols adapted automatically. When new resources were discovered or became scarce, her contracts adjusted to keep trade flowing smoothly. Now, without those human-designed systems, trade agreements were shattering like crystal hitting stone every time conditions changed. Species were withdrawing from trade partnerships rather than risk deals that might turn against them. The galactic economy was becoming a collection of isolated markets instead of the connected web of commerce it had been for centuries. Sectar touched a control, and the display changed to show industrial reports from Morkanth, the galaxy's largest manufacturing world. The numbers were even worse. On Morkanth, the great factories had been running smoothly for over 200 years, using systems that the Clicktar had perfected through endless repetition and careful planning. Every process was optimized, every step was predictable, and every worker knew exactly what to do in every situation. Jae-sung had been the human safety inspector assigned to Factory Complex 7. The Clicktar had thought his job was unnecessary. Their systems never failed, their processes never varied, and their workers never made mistakes. What could a human safety inspector add to such perfection? The answer became clear 3 months after Jae-sung left. Factory Complex 7 manufactured the control circuits used in starship navigation systems. The process was completely automated and had worked flawlessly for decades. But when a solar storm disrupted the planet's magnetic field, the delicate manufacturing equipment began producing circuits with tiny flaws that the quality control systems could not detect. The flaws were so small that the circuits passed all standard tests. They would work perfectly for months before failing suddenly and without warning. By the time the problem was discovered, over 10,000 defective navigation circuits had been installed in ships throughout the galaxy. The Clicktar factory supervisors called emergency meetings to try to understand how this could have happened. Their systems were perfect. Their quality controls were thorough. Their procedures covered every possible scenario they had ever encountered, but Jae-sung had designed backup systems for scenarios they had never encountered. He had created redundant chaos protocols that monitored for unexpected problems and unusual patterns. The Clicktar had considered these systems wasteful and paranoid. They had disabled them within weeks of his departure. Human safety protocols are too expensive, the factory managers had decided. They prepare for problems that will never happen. Now ships were experiencing navigation failures in deep space, and rescue operations were being launched across the galaxy. The Clicktar managers realized that Jae-sung's paranoid backup systems would have detected the problem before any defective circuits left the factory. Similar crises were emerging everywhere. On the crystal cities of the Vellani homeworld, structural integrity systems were developing stress fractures that spread through entire districts. The Vellani had always built their cities using perfect mathematical harmony, with every crystal support beam calculated to bear exactly the right amount of load. But Minho had installed adaptive stress distribution systems that could handle unexpected loads and shifting forces. When crystal formations shifted due to planetary cooling, or when unusually heavy weather changed weight distribution patterns, his systems automatically redistributed stress to prevent catastrophic failures. The Vellani had removed those systems as unnecessarily complex. Their mathematical perfection should have made such adaptations unnecessary. Now their cities were cracking, and they did not know how to fix problems that their perfect mathematics had never predicted. On the ocean world of Aquatica Prime, the crisis was even more immediate. Platform 17 had been the first deep-sea mining facility to fail completely. The massive structure had been crushed by pressure changes during an unexpected storm system that pushed ocean currents into patterns the Mordeal had never seen. Before Fluxara floated in the emergency command center, surrounded by the wreckage reports from what had been the galaxy's most productive mining operation. Dayun's pressure adaptation systems had been designed to handle exactly this kind of unexpected event, but the Mordeal engineers had replaced them with simpler, more predictable systems that could not cope with chaos. 17 Mordeal workers had died in the platform collapse. It was the first major industrial accident on Aquatica Prime in over 3 centuries. The educational crisis was subtler but perhaps more dangerous. At the Galactic University, professors were discovering that their students could no longer handle unexpected problems or novel research challenges. Yejin had been a human professor who taught what she called adaptive problem-solving. Her classes were designed to prepare students for situations they had never encountered before. She would give them incomplete information, contradictory data, and problems that had no clear solutions. Other professors had thought her methods were cruel and unnecessary. Why teach students to struggle with impossible problems, they had asked. Better to give them clear knowledge that they can use reliably. But now, as new challenges arose throughout the galaxy, technological failures, economic disruptions, ecological changes, the galaxy's best-educated citizens had no idea how to respond. They had been trained to apply known solutions to familiar problems. When faced with unknown problems that required creative solutions, they simply stopped functioning. The crisis reports kept flowing into Sektar's office. Space pirate attacks were increasing because human patrol patterns had been irregular and unpredictable, making it impossible for pirates to avoid them. The alien patrol routes that replaced them were logical and efficient, which meant pirates could easily predict where patrols would be and plan their attacks accordingly. Disease outbreaks were spreading faster because human quarantine protocols had been designed to handle unknown pathogens with unpredictable transmission patterns. The replacement protocols worked well against familiar diseases, but could not adapt quickly enough to contain new threats. Even the galaxy's communication networks were becoming less reliable. Human technicians had designed communication systems with redundant pathways and adaptive routing that could work around damaged relays and unexpected interference. The replacement systems were more elegant and efficient, but they failed completely. When single critical nodes were damaged, Sektar's private communicator chimed with an urgent message. High Arbiter Vellani was requesting an emergency meeting. He found her in her crystal chamber, her normally perfect form showing stress fractures that made her voice sound strained and discordant. "The situation is becoming critical," she said, without preamble. "My own city district experienced a partial collapse yesterday. The engineering team says they cannot predict where the next failure will occur because the stress patterns are not following mathematical models." Sektar's scales darkened. "How bad is it across council space?" "Bad and getting worse," Vellani replied. "The Mordeal have lost 3 more mining platforms. The Click-Tar factories are producing defective goods at unprecedented rates. Trade disputes are multiplying because nobody knows how to write flexible agreements anymore." She paused, her crystal form chiming softly with what sounded almost like regret. "The humans were not just workers in our civilization. They were our immune system. They handled all the problems that we preferred to ignore." "They were chaos bringers," Sektar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," Vellani agreed. "They brought chaos. But they also managed chaos. While we built perfect systems for predictable situations, they built adaptive systems for unpredictable ones. We thought we were eliminating chaos by removing humans. Instead, we eliminated our ability to handle chaos." The reports continued to arrive throughout the day. Research stations were abandoning projects because they encountered unexpected difficulties. Colonies were requesting emergency aid because their systems could not adapt to changing conditions. Military units were suffering defeats against enemies who used unpredictable tactics. The galaxy had achieved the peace it wanted by removing the humans who thrived on struggle and chaos. But that same chaos had been part of the natural universe all along. By removing the humans who could handle unpredictable problems, the galaxy had left itself defenseless against unpredictability itself. Late that night, Sektar stood alone in his office, staring at a communication request that had been waiting in his system for hours. 2 years after the human exodus, the galaxy was dying. Chancellor Sectar stood in the ruins of what had once been the Galactic Council's most prestigious research facility. The crystal spires lay shattered across the ground like broken glass, their perfect mathematical harmony destroyed by stress patterns that no one could predict or prevent. Filani emergency crews moved carefully through the wreckage, their chiming voices creating a mournful symphony of loss. 43 researchers died in the collapse, reported emergency coordinator Theshera, her crystal form flickering with grief patterns. The stress analysis team says the failure cascade started in Section 7, but they cannot determine why the load distribution systems did not compensate. Sectar's scales had turned a dull gray with exhaustion. He had not slept properly in months, not since the crisis reports had become a daily flood of disasters and failures. Were there any human-designed systems still functioning in that section? No, Chancellor. We removed the last human adaptive stress protocols 18 months ago. The replacement systems were more efficient and used 30% less computational power. And now they have used 0% computational power, permanently, Sectar said bitterly. The irony was not lost on him. The galaxy had spent centuries perfecting systems that eliminated waste, uncertainty, and unpredictability. Every major species had evolved beyond the need for conflict, competition, and chaos. They had created a beautiful, harmonious civilization built on mathematical precision and logical planning. But the universe itself had not evolved beyond chaos. Stars still exploded unexpectedly, planets still shifted in their orbits, and quantum fluctuations still created random events that no amount of planning could predict. The galaxy had built perfect systems for an imperfect universe, and only humans had understood that this was a problem. Sectar's communication device chimed with another emergency signal. This one came from the Mordeal homeworld, where the deep ocean cities were experiencing catastrophic failures as tidal patterns changed in ways their modeling systems could not predict. Chancellor, the message began, transmitted through the complex sonic patterns that Mordeal used for long-distance communication. We have lost City Complex 12. The pressure wave pattern shifted due to thermal changes in the deep ocean currents. Our prediction systems indicated this scenario had a probability of less than 0.003%, so we did not design contingencies for it. Sectar closed his eyes. Of course they had not designed contingencies for unlikely events. No species except humans had ever seen the point in preparing for problems that probably would not happen. The message continued. We are requesting immediate consultation with human deep ocean engineers. We understand that humans are no longer part of Council space, but we are willing to offer significant compensation for their expertise. It was the same request he had been receiving for months. The Clicktar wanted human factory engineers to help them redesign their production systems. The energy beings called Fluxnar needed human chaos theorists to stabilize their mental networks. The plant-based Thornvi were begging for human agricultural specialists as their crop yields collapsed due to unexpected climate variations. Everyone wanted the humans back, but no one wanted to admit they had been wrong. Sectar made a decision that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. He activated his personal communicator and sent a priority message to Kormesh, his most trusted aide. Prepare a diplomatic ship. We are going to Earth. The journey to human space took 3 days, during which time Sectar received updates that made his decision seem more necessary with each passing hour. A massive solar storm had disrupted communication networks across 17 star systems because the backup routing protocols could not adapt quickly enough to changing interference patterns. A plague outbreak on the forest world of Thalanin was spreading unchecked because the quarantine systems had been designed for known pathogens and could not cope with a virus that had mutated in unexpected ways. Most disturbing of all, the galaxy's military forces were proving helpless against a new breed of space pirates who used chaotic attack patterns that made no logical sense. The pirates would attack valuable targets, then retreat to worthless systems. They would use inefficient weapons that caused maximum confusion rather than maximum damage. They fought like humans had once fought, unpredictably, adaptively, and with a willingness to accept short-term losses for long-term advantages. When Sektar's ship entered the Sol system, he was amazed by what he saw. Human space was thriving. New colonies dotted previously unexplored worlds. Massive construction projects were underway in the asteroid belts. Most surprising of all, there were ships from alien species he did not recognize. Earth itself had changed, dramatically. The orbital shipyards were 3 times larger than when he had last visited, and they were building vessels using design principles he did not understand. The ships looked organic, with flowing curves and adaptive structures that seemed to grow rather than being assembled. Prime Minister Wu Jin met him at the lunar diplomatic station. The human leader looked relaxed and confident, showing none of the desperate energy that characterized most galactic leaders these days. Behind him stood representatives from species that Sektar had never seen before. "Chancellor Sektar," Wu Jin said with a polite smile, "welcome to human space. I hope your journey was comfortable." "Prime Minister," Sektar replied, trying to maintain diplomatic composure despite the urgency of his mission, "I come bearing an offer from the Galactic Council. We would like to discuss humanity's return to Council space." Wu Jin nodded thoughtfully. "I see, and what would this return involve?" Sektar had prepared for this moment, but the words still came difficult. "Full restoration of membership, with all previous rights and privileges. We are also prepared to offer humanity leadership positions on key committees, expanded territorial, grants, and preferential trade status." "That is very generous," Wu Jin said. "But I am curious, what has prompted this offer? When we left, the Council was quite firm that human culture was incompatible with galactic civilization." The alien representatives behind Wu Jin watched this exchange with obvious interest. Sektar noticed that one of them was a being that looked somewhat like a Kliktar, but with darker chitin and more aggressive features. Another was crystalline like the Villani, but with a structure that seemed to shift and flow constantly. "There have been challenges," Sektar admitted. "The galaxy has experienced some difficulties adapting to new circumstances." "What kind of difficulties?" asked one of the unknown aliens. This being spoke with a voice that sounded like controlled thunder, and his appearance suggested a warrior culture. Wu Jin gestured toward the speaker. "Chancellor, allow me to introduce Korthak of the Rathmek. His people have become our allies since leaving Council space." Sektar's scales shifted to pale yellow with shock. The Rathmek had been quarantined by the Council over a century ago, as being too aggressive and warlike for civilized society. They were exactly the kind of species that the Council had worked to contain or reform. "The Rathmek have proven to be excellent partners," Wu Jin continued. "They share our appreciation for challenges and our willingness to face difficult problems directly. Together we have established colonies in star systems that the Council considered too dangerous to explore." Korthak stepped forward, his massive frame radiating controlled power. "Humans understand what the Council species have forgotten. That strength comes from facing chaos, not avoiding it. We have learned much from each other." Sektar felt a growing sense of unease. "Prime Minister, if I may ask, what has humanity been doing since leaving Council space?" Wu Jin smiled wider. "Growing, Chancellor, learning, exploring. We have made contact with several species that the Council had either quarantined or never encountered. It turns out that there are quite a few civilizations out there that appreciate humanity's approach to problem solving." He gestured toward the second alien representative. "This is Scholar Vashatai of the Queenorm. Her people think in non-linear patterns that most species find incomprehensible. But humans seem to have a talent for understanding unconventional thinking, the crystalline being flowed forward, her structure constantly shifting in patterns that made Sektar's eyes hurt to follow. Humans and Queenorm together have solved mathematical problems that have puzzled the galaxy for millennia," she said, in a voice like singing glass. "We think around corners, and they think through obstacles. It is a productive partnership." Yun Seo, Director of Human Colonial Expansion, stepped forward with a datapad in her hands. "We have established successful colonies in the Maelstrom Nebula, the Scar Cluster, and the Void Edge systems. These are regions that Council species avoid because of unpredictable conditions and high risk factors." She handed the pad to Sektar, who stared at the colonization reports in disbelief. 12 new worlds with human settlements, All of them, in areas that the Council had declared uninhabitable or too dangerous to explore. "The thing about dangerous places," said Junho, a human explorer who had joined the group, "is that they are also places where no one else goes. That means untapped resources, unique discoveries, and room to grow without interference.